Thank you, audience, for being patient. Thank you, Jerry, and everybody else who's been here. And thank you, my fellow panelists, for patiently waiting for our panel to start. Right? I think we are royally 1 hour late, but then better late than never. My name is Dwarika Unial, and मैं लिखता हूँ क्योंकि ख्याल को बेवजह मन में सोच कर ज़ाया नहीं करते. मैं लिखता हूँ क्योंकि ख्याल को बेवजह मन में सोच कर ज़ाया नहीं करते. ख्याल को हवा लगनी चाहिए, उसे कलम की नोक से कागज़ पर उकेर कर जिंदा रखना ज़रूरी है. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to have just 30 minutes, and I have very, very distinguished panel here. And we're going to talk about their poetic journey, talk about their writing, their inspirations. We'll start with their poetic verses and we'll end at the kind of impact they would like to create through their written word and spoken word as well. Mamta ji, namaskar. So the first poet I have with me is Dr. Sukrita Paul Kumar. She is an Indian poet, critic, academic, and has been the chief editor of Cultural Diversity, Linguistic Plurality. If I've got something wrong, it's all Wikipedia, ma'am. Right? So there. So I'll start with ma'am to start with her poetic verses and talk a little bit about her own poetic journey once she's done with her brief verses, ma'am, from your book. Please go ahead.
So would you like?
Yeah, read a bit of it, and then we'll talk about your poetic journey, how it started, your inspirations, and things like this.
Is this working? So maybe instead of talking right away, maybe we should just get into poetry and
start with the poetry.
Yeah,
and
I
then
will.
we'll start with the poetry.
Yeah, all right. So what I'm going to do is to read a couple of poems. Yeah. So I'm going to read one, not long, but longer than what I will read after that. One longish poem and one kind of page of short ones, right? So, so this is an old poem, but I just feel like reading this one, so I'll read it. I call it Dream Catcher. I must reach the forest in time, before the break of dawn each day, to pick some dreams scattered in misty darkness. I must reach before the sun crackles, through the leaves of the trees on which dreams pile up, perching on the branches through the night, dreams half dreamt, fully dreamt, and those yet to be dreamt, like babies, born and unborn, crying out for attention, making weird faces in sleep. I pick what gets my fancy, bits from wrinkled past, the shadowy fragments of future mixing in twilight, droplets of dew ready to vanish with sunrise. Each day I come home with a bag full of dreams that drip through the day for me and all. Each night I wait for the new dawn, for more dreams. I have actually written a whole lot of what I call poemlets in this book called Yellow. And I call it yellow. Many people ask why yellow. It's all because to do with a phase in my painting career when I was only using yellow, a lot of yellow. Laburnums, in this case is the laburnums on the cover of the book. So I'll read my little poemlets from here. Now I'd like you to please help with this, if you don't mind. Right, thanks. So these are sometimes just 2 lines, sometimes just 1 line, and I'll just read 1 page of poemlets here, which the series I call Silence. Silence is the prime meridian. All time starts from there. Silence is a vertical line that runs through the spine. All energy rises from there. Silence is the stillness of the universe. All movement evolves from there. Silence is the movement between one note and the next. All sound is impregnated within. Silence is the baby suckling her mother's breast, all cries of hunger like drowned.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. And the way we are setting this session is that I would want all my poets to read some of their favorite works. And then we'll have one or two questions about their poetic journey, poetic inspiration. So I would like to invite the next poet, Ms. Shumona Roy. Let me read very brief about her introduction. She's an Indian writer and a poet. Her work includes a work of non-fiction, How I Became a Tree in 2017, a novel, Missing, and a collection of poems called Out of Syllabus. And later, she has also written a short story collection called My Mother's Lover and Other Stories, and some of her new works have come up. In the shortage of time, I would request Shumona to start with her favorite poems from some of her favorite books here, which she has written, and then we'll move to the next one. Please go ahead.
This one's called Bamboo. We like things without bones. We like things that dissolve inside our mouths, the way life seems to have dissolved into this world. For death might not have touched every region, a napkin, a part of a mirror, newly born memory, but life's business is everywhere. Life's business is in bones. We like things without bones. We want affection to be boneless, only muscles. Like an elephant's trunk, we distrust bones. Life passes through them, hidden like cunning. They break without reason, like retirees, but also return, as if after an interval. We like things without bones, except when they are bamboo. Then we dislike the encumbrances of flesh, when meat and bone become one and the same, like comedy. Grief inseparable from laughter. Anything without grease will curl, dry hair. That must be how the heart acquired folds. Love is grease, it hydrates. Its bones are invisible as in water. Bamboo, oily to the touch, straight, without curls. Love has given it form, without dust, without curtains. Love is a womb, a paunch. It has no bones. And so the hollows of air that break speed, like love, waiting between nodes, bamboo's cheekbones. Bones give sophistication, form. Marriage wants to be bony, but bamboo only waits for a season without bones, a season as spineless as the sky or dreams, and finding none, it rests at last, erect, wondering whether shoes have bones. This one is called Dog. To desire loyalty after death seems slightly corrupt, like the interest earned on a fixed deposit. Money, which worked and exercised while we rested, growing abstract muscles. My childhood was a training to be that dog, the dog nipper from his master's voice. Its story in my father's voice, curdled with mammalian expectations, that I would love those who had left, that I'd sit by their voice and wait for song to become body and grow hair and hands, wait for them to return as inevitably as the other end of a belt, to know that these breaks and breaks were as natural to life as caesuras in music, that absence was only a trinket, that disappearance was natural, like baldness, that I should love the head for the vanished hair. This was conditioning to live as synecdoche, to treat their absence as only a hole in a garment. I have lived like a dog, barking at the moon and at car lights, not knowing one from the other, taking both to be a sign of arrival, of their coming. Their name on the phone screen, like a comet that'll disappear again. A hair on the pillow, I've watched over it to see it grow. An old photo that I've filled with my blood. But returning isn't easy. No one returns. Not hair, not blood, not light. Music is not in the strings, not in the throat. This, my dog-bodied heart doesn't know. It waits for them to emerge from the bellows. Thank you.
We'll shift little track to our friend from Nepal, Mr. Buddhisagar. He's a Nepali writer and a poet, very well known for his novels Karnali Blues and Firfire. His first novel was translated in English by Professor Michael and published by Penguin. His third novel, Eklo, was released in December 2022, but he is also a poet. So while he has written predominantly into the prose and the other styles, I would request Buddhisagar to recite some of his Nepali poems. If you're carrying some of it, maybe one, and then when we talk about your writing process, you could talk about your novels as well as your poetry. Thank you.
No, it's okay.
Okay? Perfect.
Thank you so much for having me here. So I tried to find English translation, but I'm fail on that. So I will read in Nepali language, so you can feel the rhythm. It's similar to the Hindi language. Some of the words look like Hindi, similar, script. So you can feel it. And poetry has been not to be understand all the times, So, Moreko Manis is like a roughly translation. It's a dead person. Moreko Manis. Moreko Manisle पछाडी फर्केर आँसुले टिलपिल भएका आफन्तका आँखाहरू हेर्छ कि हेर्दैन. मरेको मानिस हिँड्छ कति कोस कति जुनी, कुन नदीको किनारमा नुहाएर झुम्छ चिसो पानीले गालाभरि बसेका आँसुका मसिना धर्साहरू. मरेको मानिस रुन्छ कि रुँदैन. के लैजान्छ मरेको मानिसले आफ्नो झोलामा, जीवन कालभरि सबैबाट जोगाएका स्मृतिहरू. पहिलो पल्ट लेखेको प्रेम पत्र, पहिलो पल्ट हिँडेको पाइला, प्रिय किताबको प्रिय अनुच्छेद, परिवारको सामूहिक तस्बिर. मरेको मानिसले आकाश गंगाको डिलमा उभेर मुटुबाट सम्बन्धका ध्वजाहरू फुकाउँछ कि फुकाउँदैन. अन्तिम पल्ट धरतीतिर फर्केर एक जुनी जीवनमा आफूसँग गाँसिएका सबैलाई सम्झेर मुस्कुराउँछ कि मुस्कुराउँदैन. मरेको मानिसको गोजीमा फर्किएर आउने ठेगाना हुन्छ कि हुँदैन. Thank you.
Buddhisagar, a few lines for you. Amazing, and for all of the writers here and the poets. Before I move to Anupama, is that यूं लिखो कि जी रहे हो तुम, यूं लिखो कि जी रहे हो तुम, लम्हे कब अल्फाज बन जाए क्या पता. यूं लिखो कि जी रहे हो तुम, लम्हे कब अल्फाज बन जाए क्या पता. और फिर दास्तानें ऐसे ही तो शुरू होती हैं, और फिर दास्तानें ऐसे ही तो शुरू होती हैं. दास्तान को आगे बढ़ाते हैं. And we have a brilliant writer and poet, Anupama Raju. A very brief introduction to her. She is a poet, literary journalist, communications professional and translator. She is the author of Bitter Good, a poetry collection, Copper Coin, a novel, and Nine, a poetry collection as well. So Anupama, why don't we start with you?
Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. So I'll read 3 poems, one each from each of my books. I'll read first from my first book of poems because it's turning 10 years this year. So I'm happy about it. This book is Nine from Speaking Tiger. The Memory Maker. When she died, her body grew into walls, walls into feet, feet into rooms, rooms into eyes, eyes into roof, roof into hands, hands into pillars, pillars into head, head into cobwebs, cobwebs into hair, hair into air, air into dust, and he turns dust into memory. Thank you. The next poem is from my novel actually. It's called C, the letter C, and it was a poem, it was a novel I wrote in prose and poetry. The scarcity principle. So there's a little bit of science here. Once I told you I must apply the scarcity principle. The less I'm available, the more you'd seek me. The more I hide, the less you're likely to disappear, I said. Sparse as hair, scanty as God, sporadic as the monsoon, infrequent as sanity. If I could become scarce, then you would value me, I said. But love, why would you do that? You asked. Scarce or abundant, it's not quantity that matters, it's quality, remember? Damn it, I hate it when you're right. And the last one from my latest book of poems, Bitter Gourd. Somehow I seem to be reading this poem in most places, so I'll end up reading this one. I know there were some of you who listened to it yesterday, but I'll read it again. Planning dinner. There's batter in the fridge anyway, enough to last a week or two. Idlis are great, but too cumbersome. Their molds pile, grate in the sink, steel scrubs, screams shrill. Soft mounds turn surly in the end. Idlis are not as easy as you think. Supple, warm, plump. They soak up sambar only if they ferment as long as swear words that linger unsaid, unheard in the tap water, now gushing out loud, loud enough for the neighbors to know it's idlis for dinner. So no idlis tonight. Let's settle for dosha. Let's go round and round, leave a sizzle here, a dribble there. Crisp enough for you? Thank you.
I'm sure the idlis are very soft and delicious, and dosas, essentially dosa has been very, very crisp as well. I have a one central, because we're running out of time, one central question to all my poets here about poetry itself, or the poem itself. And I will start with Sukriti. What is, Sukriti, Sukrita, sorry. Right. What is a poem for you? How does it come to you? How do you balance thought versus craft? And is a poem ever complete? Please go ahead.
Well, I still don't know. I've been writing forever, but somehow it's very difficult to define poetry. But yes, one thing I can tell you, that when it can come any time, and not the whole poem, but it could be just a glint in the eye of maybe an urchin on the road, or it could be, some dream, or just an image maybe somewhere. But when it comes with full force. And you feel, my God, I need to record this moment. It's the moment, it's a very total kind of a moment. But the poem comes maybe much later. But what I do is I want to hold on to it. So how do I hold on? Well, nowadays we have the phone all the time with us. But I used to always carry, and I still do actually, a little pocket diary or something. And even if it were to be in a dream, then I would just wake up and jot down just that image, just 2 words, a line or something. Or it could be, sometimes a whole stanza. Sometimes I just wonder, what can I give it a word at all, But I know that moment has to be grasped, and how do I hold on to it? So that's the way I capture it. And sometimes I know when I don't have the words for it, I just kind of, in my mind, maybe some colors, and then I might paint instead. So I do that pretty often, and many a times it's a painting that comes, to my mind, but sometimes it's aborted, because for a painting you need a longer time. So I have filled up my time too much, and I do not know why. Sometimes in little nothings, And I think it's probably desired also, because there is a waywardness that I want my poem to float in, right?
Supplementary question to that, because you're a painter as well, and very few people can dabble in both. Have you tried to get inspired by something you've painted and then written about it, or vice versa?
No, I haven't done that ever. Either it's a painting or it's a poem that comes. And then it could be that, that particular point that I'm talking about, what I hold on to, I might go to those words years later sometimes, because, just find it somewhere, amidst my books or something. But believe me, that moment does grow into a whole poem, if I can catch hold of that particular piece of paper or whatever. So it's just a question of, you're talking about how does it come to be. I think somewhere it is that. Sometimes I feel that all editing happens inside. When the poem comes out, finally, inwardly I am editing every word, and I have a feeling that I have been after the idea of making it come through in the minimum of words, minimum number of words on the page. So most of my poetry, most of my poems are small. They don't go beyond 1.5 pages or at the most 2 pages, but then it's a very compact kind of situation. I try to make it more and more. If I edit physically, then I'm making it, less and less in size. And
Perfect. Same question to Shumona, Anupama. Anyone can start.
If I knew how a poem comes, I would do it more often. The fact that, well, at least for myself, it might be true for all of us, there's an intimation of some kind of arrival. But because it is the character of the poem or the poetic to be unrecognizable, it is never the same in the way the 3 poems that Anupama read, for instance, are so different from each other. She wouldn't have known after writing the first one, published, say, 10 years ago, from the most recent one. They are different from each other. They are related, like members of a very large family, but they are not necessarily siblings or twins. I don't know what a poem is. I have a rough sense of what the poetic is, that it is illegitimate, it is not supposed to exist, but because it does, it gives something to my life and I think ours that makes life what it is. I know it's a cliche, but sometimes in the class, because when I begin teaching, a student will ask me, "So professor, what is a poem for you?" And I don't know, so I'll say, I cheat. I say, I can tell you what the poetic is for me. And I give them, because they're just fresh out of school, I remind them of the class year photo taken at the end of the academic year. And I say, imagine that this photo is being taken and all of you are there, and sometimes, or just for one moment, a crow flies through the frame and the photographer on the lawn takes that photo. And years later, you come back with your spouse, partner, family, companion, and they ask you, which is your photo? Because this is a room which has photos for many, many decades. And yours is very easy to identify. You say, mine is the one which has the crow in it, but the crow does not belong to the class of 2025. But because it does, it has moved from being information to the poetic. The other photos are information. This is the poetic. So that is what it is for me.
Perfectly said. Anupama?
I wouldn't dare define a poem, and I think we are all in that quest. But poetry is medicine. It is healing both for the reader and the writer. And in fact, some of you may be aware of this little shop in England called the Poetry Pharmacy, where you actually go and you can buy a pill and you are prescribed a poem for the malady that you're experiencing. I believe in the power of poetry, and that is why, in fact, I'm even doing I'm doing a doctorate right now on how we can use poetry in business communication for employees and companies. Because communication can, I think, definitely borrow several elements from poetry. So I certainly believe that it is healing.
Fantastic. That is, I think the business executives need a lot more poetic narratives in their lives, and I am a business professor, and I do believe that it does help making things a lot more simpler and insightful, a lot more. Budhisagar, your thoughts?
In short, as a poet, for me, poetry is like aftershock, so if you see something, it's break your heart, and poetry will come like aftershock, As a reader, poetry reader, it's like a mantra. Sometimes, I read poetry 10 years ago. I found some different meaning from it. So after 10 years, I found different meaning of it. So it's like as a reader, it's mantra for me. As a writer, poet, it's like aftershock.
Thank you. We have just 30 seconds. So for all my poet friends, I've written this poem long time ago with for my poet friends, and I'm dedicating this to all four of them. Is तुम लिखते हो इस तरह जैसे कैनवस पर उतर आया है चांद. तुम लिखते हो इस तरह जैसे कैनवस पर उतर आया है चांद, जैसे बादलों को ठंड लग गई है, जैसे गलियों का लैंप पोस्ट बरसों बाद जिंदा हो उठा है. तुम लिखते हो इस तरह जैसे कैनवस पर उतर आया है चांद, जैसे बादलों को ठंड लग गई है, जैसे गलियों का लैंप पोस्ट बरसों बाद जिंदा हो उठा हो. हाँ, तुम लिखते हो इस तरह जैसे तन्हा रूहों को पनाह मिल गई है. तुम और तुम्हारी नज़्में रूहानी जुड़वा हो मेरी. तुम और तुम्हारी नज़्में रूहानी जुड़वा हो मेरी. With that, we'll finish this particular session. I would like to thank Dr. Sukrita, Shumona, Anupama and Buddhisagar for absolutely mesmerizing session. We hope that we can do a private session with set of people. We continue to talk about our poetry and recite a lot more, because I would like to read a lot more of the work you've done. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Ma'am Madhuchanda Boro to please come on stage and felicitate the entire panel. A huge round of applause for the entire panel and moderator.